More secrets from the Trump campaign database and how dystopian ads in 2020 about Black Lives Matter protests can be aimed at dividing America to deliver 4 more years.
To me, it's just another chilling reminder of the ways in which President Trump has prevented people from accessing the ballot box and from using their right to vote.
Are you worried he might be doing it again this time around?
Absolutely.
Good evening. That's the Democrat response to last night's revelations of how the Republican campaign wanted to deter millions of black Americans from voting in 2016. A Trump spokesperson claimed our investigation was fake news, but they have not offered a real person to answer our real questions. Tonight, we have more revelations from this huge leak of campaign data and how it could be used today. We tracked down the overwhelmingly white voters classified as open to persuasion. Huge numbers of them had listed law and order as a key concern. So does that explain why they are seeing so many divisive Trump campaign ads? About how a Biden presidency would mean the chaos of riots and looting. We've been to talk to those people on the Trump database to see if they're being targeted with this law and order message and whether it's working on them.
Communities, not criminals.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Does that kind of message appeal to you?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
And I pay a visit to the academic whose 4-year fight to get his Cambridge Analytica data was featured in the documentary The Great Hack. We found his file.
This is what we were fighting to get. This is what I knew was there. I mean, I think every voter has a right to see this. It's crazy that we don't have the right to see this. It's crazy that you have to come and show me mine.
Also tonight, the UK records the highest number of daily infections since the beginning of the pandemic. There were 7,143 new cases recorded in the last 24 hours. 71 people have died, the highest recorded number since July, bringing the total number of deaths recorded to 42,072. And the Prime Minister apologises for getting his own rule of 6 wrong.
It's 6 in a home or 6 in hospitality, but as I understand it, not 6 outside.
Coming home for Christmas, the Education Secretary promises students in England they won't be trapped at university. And empty stadiums push football clubs from lower leagues towards financial ruin. They appeal to the richer leagues and the government for help.
Last night, this programme revealed Donald Trump's strategy to deter millions of black Americans from voting for Hillary Clinton. Tonight, how white voters are being targeted to be terrified of Joe Biden. The airwaves and internet here are constantly running Trump campaign ads full of fear and loathing. Images of riots and burning are the flip side to months of anti-racist protests. Tonight's revelations come from a huge data leak from Trump's 2016 campaign obtained by our investigations unit, which contains detailed information on almost 200 million American voters. We meet the voters the Trump campaign targeted for persuasion. These targets are overwhelmingly white, and the campaign knew exactly which issues they cared about. Now the very same voters are being targeted again with messages of division and fear. I've been to Kenosha, in the crucial state of Wisconsin, scene of riots after the shooting of Jacob Blake, to meet the voters classified for persuasion by the Trump campaign.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Donald Trump's 2020 campaign bombardment targeted directly at the Facebook feeds and social media of millions of Americans.
Lawless criminals terrorize Kenosha. Joe Biden takes a knee. Biden
Striking often at one emotion,
led to chaos and violence.
fear,
Communities, not criminals. Jobs.
and one solution.
Strong leadership when America needs it most.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
We saw the fear and division here in Kenosha, a city in the swing state of Wisconsin. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by a white police officer, bringing protesters and vigilantes to town. As protest gave way to riot, shops and offices were razed to the ground. The burned-out buildings would soon provide the perfect backdrop for Donald Trump to reach out to millions of voters classified in his campaign database as open to persuasion.
A thing like this should never happen. It ended almost from the minute we came in.
Donald Trump came here to the ruins in Kenosha to tell America that he's the man who knows how to stop a riot by sending in federal forces without hesitation. Now, since then, many commentators have pointed to opinion polls suggesting that it didn't move the dial very much. But as we know from how the Trump campaign has categorized the database, these messages are targeted at specific voters who have concerns about law and order, and they don't need many of them to swing the state. The Trump campaign divided voters into 8 segments, but its potential support was based in 3: core Trump, get out the vote, and the swing voters classified as persuasion. The data reveals that in the key states, the 3 categories were all overwhelmingly white. And for these voters, the data also shows law and order came up again and again as a key issue. The data told the campaign which voters to target and what to tell them, allowing the Trump campaign to fill their social media feeds with hyper-local ads. The tactic worked 4 years ago. Is it working again now? This is where the ads are targeted, a couple of miles from where the protest and riot took place, a cluster of wards rich in the type of middle-class votes the Trump campaign craves, the nice, neat, overwhelmingly white suburbs which are the real battleground in this election. Take the tiny area of Ward 22. In 2016, the biggest group of voters here, about a third, were classified for persuasion or swing voters. Has what happened in Kenosha affected the way you feel about this?
It continues to solidify my support for Trump just because of what he believes in. He supports law enforcement. I was in the military, currently in law enforcement, so everything from the other side with the Biden camp, I clearly don't have any kind of feeling that they would support me.
Did you feel under threat here?
I did feel the need to have my security armed and my weapon loaded on my nightstand for the first time.
One of the few black residents in this ward is Raquel Bagley. In 2016, the Trump database had her down as a possible persuasion. Her partner was putting up new security cameras when we arrived.
Well, makes you feel not safe. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of doing all this extra security, because I just don't feel safe.
So Trump's message to you is not working, clearly.
Oh, no.
He brought more anarchy. It was more chaos. It made people in this community especially feel like they had to bring guards, armed guards at the front of our complex.
Really?
I mean, that's
Yeah.
not
You have people here with guns?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were doing...
that makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, security checks, but they were like racial
Civilian.
profiling. Yeah, they were profiling.
Civilians.
Are you unusual in this particular area as people of color?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very few people of color in this area.
This is Ward 77 in Kenosha, and it's a very keenly fought area between the Republicans and Democrats. It went for Obama in 2012 very narrowly, and then in 2016, Donald Trump won it by just 20 votes. Now, the Republican database identified nearly 1 in 4 people in this small area as possibly persuadable to vote Republican. It's apparent here that 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House has made some people previously categorized as open to persuasion clearly not. I saw the Biden sign in your front yard, but in 2016, the Trump campaign thought you were open to persuasion and then actually a Trump supporter.
Really? I wonder what that was, how would they judge that, or where they got that idea?
A lot of people I've been speaking to in the neighborhood have actually been saying the protests and the damage that happened is pushing them towards Trump. Is that what you're hearing from your neighbors?
The people in the neighborhood are saying that? I kind of got that. Well, you know, I'm on Facebook with a lot of them, which is fine, but we're kind of sheltered here.
Are you Michael?
I am.
So is that you there, Michael Belcaster?
That's me.
And that's your address?
Yeah.
You live with Holly?
That's right.
Can you think of any reason why the Republican campaign would regard you as somebody who might vote for them?
I have no idea. I think I keep getting stuff in the mail for the Republican campaign.
Oh, really? So they are targeting you?
My wife, I think, generally votes Republican, and I'm more...
Are you Holly Belcaster?
Who are you guys?
And the reason I have your names on the list is because we have a list of voters from the Republican Party from 2016. And they have you down as somebody who was possibly a Trump supporter, you know, or who might be open to persuasion. Is that correct?
I'm trying to change her mind.
Michael was telling me that he was opposed to what Trump said when he came to Kenosha. How did you feel about it?
About Trump coming to Kenosha?
Yeah.
I actually was very happy that he came to Kenosha.
They went to see the...
Yeah, we went. I took the kids to go see...
I was at work.
To go see him, and I felt that he... If it wasn't for Trump, who knows how long that could have been going on. He was the one I felt like kind of intervened and...
Is he fanning the flames at all of the problems that are going on, you think?
I think there were a lot of angry
or is
people,
he
but
doing
I
anything
personally was
to
happy that he came here.
quell
I
the
felt,
flames?
Yeah.
And so has it made you more likely to vote for him again?
Yes, that made me a little bit stronger. I probably could have maybe been swayed a little bit easier, but I felt like he really, it pulled on my heartstrings a little bit more than I felt like he cared.
To protect Wisconsin's families, communities, not criminals.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Does that kind of message appeal to you?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
So can I tell you how they thought of you in 2016? They thought that you were open to persuasion, which means that you were sort of in the middle, but you were persuaded.
Who knows this? Right. I'm curious, where is this information from?
Well, this is the Trump campaign database.
Okay.
It says you're, by personality group, they say you're an optimist.
What the?
Yes.
Would you say that's about right?
Yes.
Okay. You care about taxes,
Yeah.
wages, and education. Those are your top 3 issues.
Yeah.
Would you say that's right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they've got you pretty good so far, haven't they? So what do you think about the fact that that kind of data about you exists on a database held by a political party?
That kind of bothers me.
Yes.
It's weird.
So now you know when you see those political ads on your Facebook page.
They're
there for a reason.
They're very specific, yeah.
What do we want? Justice! Where do we want it? Now!
The black minority here is still marching peacefully, and there hasn't been any violence in Kenosha for weeks. But they know that to make a Black Lives Matter in their terms, it takes more than protest.
You need to exercise your right to vote. If everybody here does not go register to vote when they leave here, this protest is pointless. You saying Black Lives Matter is pointless.
But these are the images the Trump campaign want the white majority to see. And if their database means they can target enough of those open to persuasion, it could make the crucial difference again. Well, President Barack Obama appears to have reacted to our revelations of last night. In a campaign video supporting Joe Biden, he accused Donald Trump's White House of working to keep people from voting, adding they were especially targeting communities of color.
Right now, from the White House on down, folks are working to keep people from voting, especially communities of color. That's because there's a lot at stake in this election. Not just our pandemic response or racial justice, but our democracy itself. So it's more important than ever to make your voice heard.
Well, we asked again today to speak to someone from Facebook, but they didn't offer anyone up for interview. Earlier, I spoke to the author and academic Shoshana Zuboff, who's written extensively about how big tech is out of control in her view and has undermined democracy across the world. I started by asking for her reaction to our investigation.
We are all in a state of information warfare. This is a civilian effort of information warfare where unsuspecting citizens, even when we are citizens of democratic societies, we have become the targets. We are the enemies, if you will, because we are targeted with these immense amounts of data that provide so much insight into us. We are targeted so that they can anticipate what we're going to do, but also learn how to trigger and shape our behavior in ways that conform to their commercial objectives.
Facebook claimed that what happened 4 years ago couldn't happen now because they've changed their rules. Have you seen any evidence that we are now protected from this kind of behavior?
No, and this is one of the tragedies that we're living through right now. Facebook has known, not only for the 4 years since the 2016 presidential elections and Brexit votes in the UK, but long before that, we saw many countries around the world whose elections were completely upended and disfigured by these same dynamics.
Don't people have to just take responsibility for where they put the cross in the box on election day? You know, we've always been subject to television advertising, print advertising. Isn't what's going on social media just an extension of that? And we have to take responsibility for our own democratic decisions.
I wish that we could say that social media was just an extension of that. I would sleep so much better at night if that were true. Here's what's really going on. What is being marshaled around us is a highly powerful, detailed digital infrastructure. The AI ingests, that's Facebook's word, trillions of data points every day. And it is able to produce 6 million predictions of behavior every single second. This is unlike anything ever in human history. They know so much more about us than we could ever know about them or even know about ourselves.
Are there simple ways to change the law to regulate these things, or is it just too big?
Absolutely, we can fix this. The good news is we have not even tried yet. We haven't even started to try and fix it. So what we have here is a situation where Facebook and the other companies who are participating in this new surveillance-based economic logic began in the tech sector, but now has blown right through the normal economy. So we see this in virtually every industry. We need laws that say you cannot unilaterally and secretly take my private experience and use it as your free raw material. And if we can do that, then we've got a chance of a digital future that is actually compatible with democracy, rather than one that is trending us toward this much darker future where a few people can manipulate individuals and populations at will without any checks or balances on their power.
Shoshana Zuboff, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And later in the programme, as the Trump campaign calls our investigation fake news, we hear from a leading Democrat about what this means for the current election campaign. And also, after our deep dive into the database, we'll speak to Professor David Carroll, the man who fought for years to find out exactly what data was held by Cambridge Analytica about him.
It's just a level of abuse that we're tolerating in this country. And we can't. It works as a suppression system. It works to subvert the will of the people.
Now here, the Prime Minister has apologized.
Our exclusive investigation into how data was used by the Trump campaign has found how some voters were targeted with messages to persuade them to vote Trump, while others were targeted to deter them from voting at all. And President Barack Obama has just warned today that the Trump campaign are trying to suppress the votes of people of colour. With just 35 days to go, tonight millions are expected to tune in to the first of 3 election debates between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Our correspondent Siobhan Kennedy joins me now from Cleveland, Ohio, where it's all taking place. Siobhan.
Well, Krishna, this is one of the most hotly anticipated debates in recent US election history. Donald Trump, the incumbent, versus his Democratic rival, Joe Biden. The two men, we know, do not like each other, and so it is expected to get pretty nasty pretty quickly, and there is plenty to chew on. The coronavirus, an economy in the doldrums, and an ongoing racial reckoning, tensions around which have been made all the more acute by our investigation. That has played pretty big here in the media and on social media. And earlier I caught up with the Democratic Senator Chris Coons, an advisor to Joe Biden, and I asked him what he thought about the revelations.
ITN's detailed investigation into the database used by the 2016 Trump campaign and the ways in which they successfully targeted and deterred black voters is a reminder of why President Trump should be defeated in this election. He's been acting not in the best interest of the American people in how he's led during a pandemic and a recession, and how he has cracked wider open racial divisions within the United States. To me, it's just another chilling reminder of the ways in which President Trump has prevented people from accessing the ballot box and from using their right to vote.
Are you worried he might be doing it again this time round?
Absolutely.
Well, the president, we know, has left the White House on his way here. Senator Coons told me to expect the strategy for Joe Biden to rise above the personal attacks from Donald Trump. The president will be hoping that he slips up, that he makes some gaffe in some way. But Joe Biden is expected to focus his message instead on the president's failings around the economy and the coronavirus. He's also expected to take a poke at revelations in the New York Times that Donald Trump paid very little or no tax in 10 of the last 15 years. Let's hear how the senator put it earlier.
Well, what we're going to see tonight is Donald Trump, the master of spectacle, the reality TV maven, once again using every trick in the book to switch the attention of the audience away from being held accountable for his record of failed leadership during this pandemic and recession, and instead making it all about a personal fight between him and Joe Biden. And we've just learned this past week two things in concrete detail: that Donald Trump's a terrible businessman, but is a spectacular tax cheat.
As a comeback, Joe Biden has released his taxes today, showing that he paid $288,000 for 2019, compared to the last known figure for Donald Trump, which was $750 in 2017. As for the polls, well, Joe Biden is ahead here, but Donald Trump took this state decisively in 2016, so it will be a key battleground. And one little polling revelation I will leave you with: when voters were asked what their main hesitation was about voting for either candidate, they said of Joe Biden it was his mental state and his age. But for the president, it was his rudeness, his racism, and simply being a bad president.
After the break, it was dubbed the David and Goliath battle over data. We speak to the man who inspired a film by standing up to the clandestine data collectors. Welcome back to Washington. Now, he's the man who stood up to the data gatherers. The academic David Carroll asked for Cambridge Analytica to release the information they held on him. They said no, so he resorted to the British courts, who found in his favour. But his quest was still unsuccessful, as documented in a Netflix movie. So I went to see him at home. David, hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Welcome.
I've come to give David Carroll a surprise. This mild-mannered New York professor has spent 4 years fighting to get the data the notorious company Cambridge Analytica had on him.
I became obsessed with finding answers.
His story formed part of the hit documentary, The Great Hack.
The Cambridge Analytica case is behind me now. They pleaded guilty for not giving me my data, and I'll probably never get it back.
Carroll won the legal rows, but never got his full data after Cambridge Analytica refused and then went bust. But the file forms part of the Trump campaign database obtained by Channel 4 News. But he doesn't yet know what we've got. David, why did you want to get your data?
To see if it was possible, to try and pry open the secret world of voter targeting. It's a mystery otherwise.
What were you worried about?
Worried about our data being abused, used against us, used to exploit the divisions and fractures in American society, to divide and conquer.
What kind of blowback did you get? Was it stressful?
It was stressful because Cambridge Analytica really did not want me to pursue this lawsuit.
So what did you end up getting?
I got some data, which was a very thin profile. It had my voter registration information, which is publicly accessible, but it had a model of my political beliefs, so issues ranked, and it certainly wasn't anything near what the company bragged that it had on us.
What did you think when you saw Cambridge Analytica implode? You know, when the stories started running, when the Channel 4 News expose, was broadcast.
We did all the research, all the data, all the analytics, all the targeting.
That I wasn't going to get the answers to our questions. Where did they get it? What did they do with it? And who did they share it with?
So you were trying to get the data that Cambridge Analytica held on you in 2016. We have obtained the Trump campaign database from 2016.
That's hard. I mean, it's like, how else would we be able to see that?
You can search it, and what we found is a file for David Carroll.
It's more than this?
Well, let's have a look. So now you got a few sort of simple things about issues. What we have here is your openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism scores.
A very low neuroticism score, thankfully. And the percentiles. See, this is critical. People who have very high conscientiousness and very high neuroticism scores, they would be very easily manipulated and have no idea it's happening.
Okay, so that's just the personality info. So we go down to commercial information.
It knows what kind of car I have, it knows if I'm a gamer, it knows my investments, it knows how I eat, knows if I use coupons, it knows, if I've ever written a blog, it knows, how I use the internet, whether I use social media, whether I have a home office, our donations.
All the charities that you support.
Indeed, yeah. This is what we were fighting to get. This is what I knew was there. I mean, I think every voter has a right to see this. It's crazy that we don't have the right to see this. It's crazy that you have to come and show me mine.
That's the David Carroll file from the Trump campaign from 2016.
Yeah, well, when you showed me my personality model, that shows that they had tried to calculate that. And
that's what psychographics are.
That's that openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, extroversion model, which is very controversial whether or not it works. But what matters to me more is that they said we didn't do that for the Trump campaign.
Cambridge Analytica said that.
Yes. And for example, Matt Oskowski, who's currently working for the campaign, he said on the record when asked by a reporter, sorry to disappoint you, but we didn't do psychographics for the Trump campaign. Well, why do I have one in my file, Matt? It's just a level of abuse that we're tolerating in this country. And we can't. It works as a suppression system. It works to subvert the will of the people.
So would you like the file?
It's been a long time coming. After all this time, just to click it is all it took. Well, thank you. Obviously, I'm pleased that it's gotten into your hands for this purpose, but ideally, we wouldn't have to rely on you to get these questions answered.
Yeah. David Carroll. Well, tonight's main news, following our revelations last night that in 2016, the Trump campaign was targeting black voters not to vote. Tonight, we revealed how white voters are being targeted to fear Joe Biden. Well, as we went to air, President Obama released a new video to support Mr. Biden. in which he also discussed the same subjects as our investigation last night, warning that President Trump's White House was working to keep voters at home, especially communities of color.
Right now, from the White House on down, folks are working to keep people from voting, especially communities of color. That's because there's a lot at stake in this election. Not just our pandemic response or racial justice, but our democracy itself. So it's more important than ever to make your voice heard.
A spokesman for President Trump described the findings of our investigation as fake news. It isn't. That's all from Washington.
We're back 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Have a really great evening.
Hello and welcome to Biscuit Week.